The Las Vegas Aces just got exposed for what might be the most blatant officiating scandal in WNBA history. And the evidence is so damning that even the league's biggest defenders are staying silent. When A'ja Wilson commits 37 uncalled fouls in a single playoff series while Aliyah Boston can't even breathe without getting whistled, you know something's seriously wrong. This isn't just bad officiating. This is straight-up manipulation, and the Fever paid the price for it. What you're about to hear will make you question every single Aces victory from their playoff run. Because when the referees are this obviously biased, it stops being basketball and starts being theater. The numbers don't lie, the video evidence is undeniable, and what Lexie Hull said after the game confirms everything fans suspected. Before we dive into this absolute mess, hit that like button if you think the WNBA needs to investigate these refs immediately. The most shocking part isn't even the 37 moving screens that A'ja Wilson got away with. It's what happened in overtime of Game 5 that really exposed the corruption. With 2 minutes left in a 2-point game, Wilson sets the most obvious moving screen you've ever seen, practically tackling the defender. And instead of calling it, the refs whistle a foul on Indiana. The Aces hit a 3-pointer off that illegal play, essentially stealing the game right in front of 20,000 witnesses. This wasn't incompetence. This was intentional, but that wasn't even close to the worst call of the night. In the third quarter, with Indiana mounting a comeback and cutting the lead to 4 points, Aliyah Boston sets a textbook screen at the top of the key. Her feet are planted, she doesn't move an inch. It's literally perfect fundamentals. The whistle blows. Offensive foul on Boston for a moving screen. The replay showed she never moved. The commentators went silent, and even the Aces players looked confused. Meanwhile, Wilson is out there throwing hip checks like she's playing hockey, and the refs act like they're blind. The free throw disparity tells you everything you need to know about how rigged this series was. Across 5 games, A'ja Wilson shot 26 free throws, while Aliyah Boston, who battles in the paint every single possession and gets absolutely mauled on post-ups, shot just 17. And here's the kicker. Nearly half of Boston's free throws came in Game 4 when the Aces were intentionally fouling to stop the clock. Take away those desperation fouls, and Boston barely saw the free throw line despite being Indiana's primary offensive weapon in the paint. What happened next would shock everyone who still believed the WNBA had any integrity left. In Games 1 and 2 of the series, Aliyah Boston didn't shoot a single free throw. Not one. This is a player who averaged over 5 free throw attempts per game during the regular season, suddenly getting 0 calls in the 2 most important games of the year. Meanwhile, Wilson was getting phantom calls on minimal contact, drawing fouls from grazing touches that wouldn't knock over a toddler. The fix was so obvious that even casual fans started noticing the pattern. The coaching staff tried to address it diplomatically, but you could hear the frustration bleeding through every word. When asked about the officiating, they pointed out the double standard in how players get their calls, specifically mentioning that Aliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the entire league. They said, if you're going to allow physical play, allow it for both teams. If you're going to call holds and chucks, call them both ways. The message was clear. The Fever weren't getting a fair shake, and everyone knew it. But the corruption goes even deeper than just the foul calls. Throughout the series, Wilson was setting illegal screens on nearly every possession, and the refs refused to call a single one. Video analysis shows she committed at least 37 moving screens across 5 games. That's almost 8 per game. She'd shuffle her feet, stick her hip out, throw shoulders into defenders to free up shooters. These weren't subtle violations either. They were blatant, obvious fouls that directly led to open shots and easy baskets for Vegas. The most infuriating example came in the 4th quarter of Game 5. Wilson sets a screen that's so illegal, it looks like she's trying out for an NFL offensive line position. She completely destroys Lexie Hull with a moving pick, creating a wide-open 3-pointer for her teammate. No call. The Aces drain the shot, extend their lead, and the Fever's momentum is killed by an obvious missed call. This happened over and over throughout the series. Illegal screens leading directly to Vegas points, while Indiana got whistled for phantom violations. What makes this even more suspicious is the timing of these non-calls. Every single time Indiana would start building momentum, cutting into the lead, or stringing together stops, that's when the whistles would suddenly go silent for Vegas violations. It's like the refs had a script: keep it close enough to seem competitive, but make sure Vegas advances. The pattern was so consistent that betting lines started shifting mid-series as sharp money realized what was happening. The foul trouble situation tells another disturbing story. Over the 5-game series, Boston was tagged with 19 personal fouls, while Wilson had just 14. This despite the fact that Boston was the one actually playing defense, guarding Wilson directly on most possessions, contesting drives, and staying vertical on every shot attempt. Wilson, on the other hand, was often switched onto smaller guards to conserve energy and rarely had to defend Boston one-on-one. Yet somehow, the player doing all the defensive work ended up with more fouls than the one coasting on that end. But that wasn't the whole story of how the refs manipulated this series. The off-ball fouls were perhaps the most egregious example of selective enforcement. Lexi Hull, who had the impossible task of chasing Wilson around screens all game, was getting absolutely brutalized. Elbows to the ribs, shoves in the back, hip checks that sent her flying, all happening right in front of the officials with no calls. Meanwhile, if Hull so much as breathed on Wilson, immediate whistle. The double standard was so obvious that fans started keeping their own tally of missed calls. The overtime period of Game 5 should be studied in referee corruption classes, because it was a masterclass in fixing a game. With the season on the line and every possession crucial, the refs completely abandoned any pretense of fairness. Wilson commits a blatant moving screen with 2 minutes left. No call, leads to 3 points. 30 seconds later, another illegal screen. No call, another bucket. Boston sets a clean pick on the other end. Offensive foul. It was like watching a magic show where everyone can see the strings, but we're supposed to pretend it's real. What really exposes the conspiracy is looking at how differently these same refs officiated other series. In the Connecticut-Minnesota semifinal, happening at the same time, moving screens were called consistently, free throws were distributed fairly based on actual contact, and star players weren't given special treatment. The contrast was so stark that even neutral observers started questioning why the Vegas series was being officiated with completely different standards. Subscribe right now if you want to see more exposés on WNBA corruption, because what I'm about to reveal about the league office's involvement will blow your mind. The connections between certain officials and Vegas management run deeper than anyone realized, and the paper trail is starting to emerge. The statistical impossibility of what happened in this series can't be ignored. Professional basketball players don't suddenly forget how to draw fouls. Elite post players don't go entire games without legitimate contact. The probability of Boston going 2 straight playoff games without a single free throw while playing 30-plus minutes in the paint is essentially zero unless there's manipulation involved. Mathematicians have calculated the odds at less than 1%. That's not variance, that's corruption. Even more damning is what happened after the series ended. The WNBA quickly announced that none of the officials from the Vegas-Indiana series would be working the finals. They didn't give a reason, didn't acknowledge any issues, just quietly removed them from the biggest stage. That's not what you do when refs perform well. That's what you do when you're trying to contain a scandal without admitting guilt. The impact on Indiana's young core can't be overstated. This team fought through adversity all season, overcame injuries, and earned their playoff spot through pure determination. To have their season end not because they were outplayed, but because the officials had an agenda, is devastating for player development and team morale. Aliyah Boston played her heart out, dominated the paint, and got absolutely nothing from the refs. How do you tell a young star to keep believing in the system when the system is this obviously rigged? What happened next would shock everyone paying attention to the league's response. Instead of investigating the obvious bias, the WNBA doubled down, with league officials praising the competitiveness of the series and highlighting Wilson's performance. No mention of the controversial calls, no acknowledgement of the complaints from Indiana, just propaganda about what a great series it was. The message was clear. The league got the outcome it wanted and didn't care how obvious the manipulation was. The real tragedy is what this means for the integrity of women's basketball. Fans invest emotionally and financially in their teams, believing they're watching genuine competition. When that trust is broken this blatantly, it damages the entire sport. Attendance numbers for Indiana dropped immediately after the series, season ticket renewals are down, and fan engagement on social media has turned toxic. The WNBA created this problem by allowing such obvious favoritism, and now they're dealing with the backlash. But here's what the league didn't count on: the power of video evidence in 2025. Every questionable call, every missed violation, every moment of bias has been clipped, shared, and analyzed by millions of fans. The 37 moving screens are documented with timestamps. The free throw disparities are charted game by game. The phantom calls on Boston are shown from multiple angles. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable, and spreading faster than the league can control the narrative. The players know what happened too, even if they can't say it publicly. Watch the body language in the handshake line after Game 5. The Indiana players barely acknowledged the refs, some refusing to make eye contact. That's not poor sportsmanship. That's disgust at having their season stolen. Several players have liked social media posts calling out the officiating, their way of confirming what everyone saw without risking fines. What makes this even more infuriating is that Indiana had Vegas on the ropes multiple times throughout the series. They'd figured out how to defend Wilson, how to attack their defensive schemes, how to control tempo. But every time they'd build momentum, every time they'd string together stops or cut into a lead, the whistles would start. It's impossible to beat a team when you're really playing against 5 players and 4 officials. The corruption extends beyond just this series, though. Looking at Wilson's free throw numbers throughout the entire 2025 season shows a clear pattern of preferential treatment. She averaged more free throw attempts than any other post player, despite playing fewer minutes in the paint than most. The refs have been protecting and promoting her all year, building her MVP narrative through whistles rather than actual dominance. This scandal should be the biggest story in sports right now, but mainstream media is barely touching it. ESPN showed the illegal screens as highlights, praising Wilson's physicality. The major networks are calling it a hard-fought series while ignoring the blatant bias. It's almost like there's a coordinated effort to protect the league's chosen narrative, regardless of what actually happened on the court. The long-term damage this does to competitive balance is immeasurable. Why should teams invest in development, coaching, and talent when the refs can just decide who wins? Why should players kill themselves in practice and play through injuries when the outcome is predetermined? The WNBA is destroying its own product by allowing this corruption to continue, and fans are starting to tune out. What's even more disturbing is that this might just be the tip of the iceberg. If they're this bold about rigging a semifinal series, what else has been manipulated? How many regular season games were influenced? How many playoff series over the years were decided by refs rather than players? Once you see the corruption this clearly, you start questioning everything. The solution is simple, but the league won't do it. Full investigation, accountability, and transparency. Release the referee reports for this series. Explain how Boston went 2 games without a free throw. Justify the 37 uncalled moving screens. Address the free throw disparity. But they won't, because doing so would mean admitting the fix was in. And that would destroy what little credibility the WNBA has left. This isn't just about one series or one team getting screwed over. This is about the integrity of professional sports and whether fans can trust what they're watching. When the corruption is this obvious and the league does nothing about it, they're telling every fan that their investment doesn't matter, that outcomes are predetermined, and that certain players and teams are above the rules. The saddest part is that we were robbed of what could have been an all-time great series. Boston versus Wilson, two generational talents going head-to-head with a finals berth on the line. Instead, we got a rigged exhibition where one player was protected and promoted while the other was handicapped by corrupt officiating. Fans deserved better, players deserved better, and the sport deserved better. Comment below if you think the WNBA needs a complete overhaul of their officiating system, because this can't continue if the league wants to survive. The evidence is undeniable, the bias is obvious, and the corruption is killing the sport. Indiana got robbed, Vegas got gifted a finals appearance, and fans got proof that the WNBA cares more about narratives than competition. This scandal won't go away no matter how hard the league tries to ignore it, and the truth always comes out eventually.